ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. نتابع القراءة في كتاب الأدب المفرد للإمام محمد بن إسماعيل البخاري رحمه الله. ذكرنا في المرة الماضية عدة أحاديث على فضل من صبر على فقد ولد وثلاثة من الأولاد أو اثنين أو حتى واحدة. باب من مات له سقط. حدثنا إسحاق بن يزيد حدثنا صدقة بن خالد قال حدثني يزيد بن أبي مريم عن أمه عن سهل بن الحنظلية وكان لا يولد لها فقال لأن يولد لي في الإسلام ولد سقط فأحتسبه أحب إلي أن تكون لي الدنيا جميعا وما فيها. وكان ابن الحنظلية ممن بايع تحت الشجرة. So this is the chapter after we said about losing the children, about those who have a stillbirth, that means the child born dead. One of the Sahaba, he was named as Ibn al-Hanzaliyya. He was one of the companions who gave Bay'atul Ridwan under the tree. Remember when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wanted to perform Umrah. When Allah gave him the vision that he's entering the Masjid al-Haram and they'll be shaving their heads, cutting their hairs, and they'll be performing Umrah. So he told the people, okay, let's go to Mecca, perform Umrah. At that time, Quraysh was controlling Mecca and they were not Muslim. So they gathered around 1,000 or so, and they went south from Medina towards Mecca. When they reached the outskirts of Mecca and Hudaybiyah, the kuffar told him, you cannot enter. And it was a common practice at that time that Quraysh are custodian of the Masjid al-Haram and they will never prevent anybody from going in. That was they have the privilege, but then at the same time they have responsibility. So Rasulullah sent Uthman ibn Affan to negotiate with the kuffar the terms of them entering. The Muslims, when they come, they had only the weapon of the traveler, just the sword in its sheath. That was the common practice. A warrior will have full armor, will have spears, will have arrows, will be ready for war. They were not ready for war. They went for peace, but at that time, things are not stable. So at least they need the minimum, which is swords in the sheath. So when Uthman went to negotiate the treaty, rumors started to spread that Kuffar Quraysh had killed Uthman. So under the tree in Hudaybiyah, all the Muslims came and gave pledge to Rasulullah ﷺ one by one that they will never run away. They will fight the Kuffar even if it means death. They will never surrender or turn away. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ فَعَلِمَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ فَأَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ عَلَيْهِمْ وَأَثَابَهُمْ فَتْحًا قَرِيبًا. Allah says, Allah knows the heart of these people. He has sent tranquility and peace on them, and Allah is pleased with them. So Ahl Bay'atul Ridwan are considered the cream of the Sahaba. So when you have the early people who believed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those who made the early hijrah, those al-ashar mubashirin bil jannah, you have the people attended Badr, and the top that come also among these tops are these 1,000 people that attended Bay'at al-Ridwan. So Ibn al-Hanzaliyya was one of them. So Ibn al-Hanzaliyya happened he never had children. He said, for me to have a stillbirth child will be more beloved to me than have a son that dies later on. So that means he knows the reward. Something like this, although it's not a hadith, it's a hint. He probably heard it or learned it, or that was his impression from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is mawquf ala sahabi. So it's not a hadith, but an opinion of a sahabi that's highly regarded. حدثنا محمد بن سلام قال أخبرنا أبو معاوية حدثنا الأعمش عن إبراهيم التيمي عن الحارث بن سويد عن عبد الله قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أيكم مال وارثه أحب إليه من ماله قالوا يا رسول الله ما منا أحد إلا ماله أحب إليه من مال وارثه فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اعلموا أنه ليس منكم أحد إلا مال وارثه أحب إليه من ماله مالك ما قدمت ومال وارثك ما أخرت. This hadith slightly different that goes about the subject of the children. In this hadith, the Sahabi is Abdullah. When they mention Abdullah, and they tell you which Abdullah, which one is it? Ibn Mas'ud. Yes. So when they just say Abdullah, it's Ibn Mas'ud. Ibn Umar usually say either Ibn Umar or Abdullah ibn Umar. Although Umar had multiple children, Abdullah wasn't the only one. But the scholar among them was Abdullah ibn Umar. So when they say just Abdullah and keep silent, it's Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Now, who is the third Abdullah that's a scholar? No. Ibn al-As. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. So هذول العبادلة الثلاثة. So these were the top scholars among whoever names Abdullah. Abdullah ibn Salam was a scholar. He was a scholar of Judaism first. He was one of their top rabbis. And he read the Old Testament, and in it, he read the where it gives foretells about the prophet that will come from the children of Ishmael, and will come in the land of Becca, and he will come in the land of mountains and dates. So he knew it was the time for the prophet. And he's going to be from the descendant of Ismail, not descendant of Yaqub, of Jacob. So he knows he's going to be an Arab, not a Jew. So when Rasulullah came to Medina, right away he recognized him. So he came and gave bay'ah to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he told him, the people, the Jews of Medina, they're tricky. They will never accept my Islam. So expose them. Said okay. He got him in a place where he was hidden under a curtain. And the top of the Jews came and was talking to him and said, what do you think of Abdullah ibn Salam? Oh, he's the top scholar we have. He's the best that we have. We trust him. He's so and so. He comes out of the curtain and say, I will tell you, I read the Torah. The Torah tells you Rasulullah is the prophet, and I believe him. I bear witness there's no God but Allah and Muhammad Rasulullah. See, he's the worst among us. He knows nothing. We don't believe him. We don't know. In the same setting. So Abdullah ibn Salam, yes, he was one of the top scholars of Islam. But in generally, when they talk about al-Abadila, these are the top Abdullah. Abdullah alone is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Then you have Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. So Abdullah bin Mas'ud, he said that Rasulullah said, who loves the money of those who inherit him more than his own money? He said, of course we love our money more than the money to inherit. I said, no. Every one of you love the money of those who inherit them more than their money. Because your money is what you spend when you're alive. The money of your inheritance when you left behind. Most people collect money and they start saving and they end up giving it to their inheritance. And they protect that money more than the money they spend it during their life. So the money you spend in their life, there are halal needs, things you eat, things you wear, take care of your family. There is rewarding deeds. When you do sadaqah, you do zakah, silat al-raham, and so on. These are true investments. So either you spend it truly on yourself, or you invested it for the akhirah, for the hereafter. But the money you just kept, you didn't use it, you didn't spend it, you didn't get for inheritance. Is it bad to leave inheritance? It's not bad by itself. You need to keep your family after you self-sufficient. You don't want to keep them in need. You don't want to leave your children, your wives, your grandchildren begging people for money, asking for favors. So yes, you need to take care of them to a degree. So should not be your obsession. And they have enough to provide for them. You either train them, give them a trade, got them to a position, whatever they can spend, then that's good enough. for them. So you shouldn't be leaving them a lot of property, a lot of land, a lot of money, and so on. Once you feel that you provide them enough for their situation, for the place, for the time they're in, then you should start thinking about your investments for akhirah. That, okay, how can I do? You can do help a masjid, help a school, people who need water, help them getting wells, building hospitals, and so on. So these are the true investments. So here talking about the love of the children, that and sometimes people are overdoing it, but a lot of it is for selfish reasons. They want to be self-sufficient. People are afraid. We don't know when we're going to die. So when you reach age 60, well, you might live another 20, 30 years. You don't know. So you're afraid that at some point you're not going to be able to work and your children might not provide for you. So you start saving more and more. Some people become more penny-tight as they grow older because now they're afraid they cannot make money and they start worrying about saving. The best money that you spend, the money you spent when you're healthy, still hoping to live longer, and when you're needy, you have needs, and you still spend for the sake of Allah. So this is the wisdom. You try to strike a balance. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنفَقُوا لَمْ يُسْرِفُوا وَلَمْ يَقْتُرُوا وَكَانَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ قَوَامًا. When Allah described Ibadur Rahman, those who worship Ar-Rahman, and one of their qualities He praised, that when they spend, they're not wasteful, and at the same time they're not penny tight, and they have a balance, strike a balance. You have somebody like Abu Bakr with his iman being so great. When Rasulullah asked for spending, he brought all his money, everything, and Rasulullah said, "What did you leave to your family?" I said, "I live in Allah and His Messenger." That's all. When Umar came, he thought, okay, today I'm going to do something Abu Bakr would never do. So he brought half of his possession. And Rasulullah said, "What did you leave to your family?" He said, "I left them similar to what I have." He said, "Abu Bakr, everything." He said, I will never compete with Abu Bakr. But we're talking about levels of iman beyond us. This is something that we weak humans are not required to do. But taking into account, it is encouraged to be charitable. You need to strike that balance. وقال أي ابن مسعود وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما تعدون فيكم الرقوب. الرقوب اللغة العربية من لم يبق له شيء يرفع رقبته، من لم يبق له ولد. قالوا الرقوب الذي لا يولد له. قال لا، ولكن الرقوب الذي لم يقدم من ولده شيئا. So in this hadith, Rasulullah asked him, who you think that's considered childless? The word they use, the raqub in Arabic. You say raqub, who doesn't have children? You say no. Raqub that never lost any of his children. That's the true raqub. It's not bad, but what it means that when you lose a child, it's not as a big a disaster people think of it. In a sense, you're going to see him in Jannah. People, of course, need to protect their children. They should provide for them, and they want to see them thriving, getting married, have their children, grandchildren, and so on. But if a loss has happened, it's not as a disaster as people think of it, that because there is still hereafter, and you can meet them in Jannah. And similar to it, there's a hadith, قال أي ابن مسعود وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما تعدون فيكم الصرعة. قالوا هو الذي لا يصرعه الرجال. قال لا، ولكن الصرع الذي يملك نفسه عند الغضب. So another hadith similar to it, where Rasulullah directed him from a common concept to the true concept. He said, what do you think a strong man, undefeatable man? See that somebody can wrestle anybody down. So he said, no, a true, strong, undefeatable man that controls his anger. So he's the one that really have the self-control. So this is the true strength. So he's always, Rasulullah directed them from common concepts to a better concept. That controlling yourself is better than being physically strong and defeating anybody in wrestling. Because a lot of people, when they get angry, they take decisions they regret. And I think most of us have been through that. The wise person will learn from his mistakes. That as you get older, your control become less angry. As you get older, you find it's never worthy of initiating a physical altercation, and you always try to diffuse the situation. Rather than when somebody inflame you, start calling you names, you call them names, they challenge you, you respond to the challenge, you get physical with them. It will lead to nothing good. If you start throwing punches with anybody, one of you are gonna end up in hospital, one of you in prison. So if you win, you go to prison. If you lost, you end up in the hospital. It's not worth it. And the same thing at work, you're mad from a co-worker or your boss, even worse, start calling names, accusations, and so on. You're gonna be losing a lot. You might lose promotion, you might lose your position, you might not get a letter of recommendation, and so on, and so on. So a wise person, you will notice, they will control themselves and not being provoked or agitated. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. When an ignorant person addresses you improperly, you say salam, peace, and leave him alone. There will be times where you have to defend yourself, somebody attacking you, attacking your family physically. Yeah, you defend yourself, but you don't agitate them or provoke them. Somebody start calling you names because of your appearance, your background, or whatever it is, and so on. Just ignore them and move on. But don't challenge them. Not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength that you control yourself. When it comes to it, they started hurting you or hurting your family, then yes, you need to stand up for what is right. Yes,
Sheikh, where's the line for that? When some people, this is a notion people say sometimes, that if people think that Islam is weak and Muslims are weak and they can be bullied, we'll have no izzah and people will not respect us, and this will continue. But if we show them that Muslims cannot be pushed around or bullied, then at some point they will have some respect towards Muslims and leave them alone.
This is a narrow-visioned way. If you're going to talk about just physical strength, just being a minority in any community, you cannot really do physical stuff. So regardless if everybody in this community were top champion in some kind of martial art, boxing, kicking, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, still you're outnumbered. And the same thing, somebody already decided to carry knives or guns or whatever, they're still outnumbered. So the strength that you get with your faith, being steadfast, gives more strength than being easily provoked. You see some people, like in Europe, you have a lot of Muslim immigrants there, and you get some ignorant person making a drawing, a cartoon, mocking our religion or the Prophet ﷺ, some teaching, so on, and they go into riots, they burn buildings, or they attack them, they kill people, and so on. That doesn't prove anything. It just proves that people are backwards, they're easily provoked. Best thing is ignore them. There's a lot of people who mock Islam, burn Quran, and so on. If you don't pay them attention, nobody will know about them. They have a small group. Salman Rushdie, nobody knew about him. He was probably a third-degree writer. His writing was trash. Until he wrote satanic verses. I read satanic verses. It's trash, basically. It's not literature. It's not like in a literature way he mocked Islam. It's trash. He verbally abused everything, whether it's Islam, whether it's the Queen, everything he abused it. But since Khomeini gave fatwa to kill him and he put the bound to his head, he became a top prominent speaker, literature. They gave him a lot of awards and so on. And so people start reading his books and paying attention to him. Ignore him, he will go into dumpster of history. Nobody would have known about him. And same thing about the cartoonists and so on. So strength is about keeping your faith and practicing it is not about provoking people and so on. It's different when you're living in a Muslim country when there are laws. You're not a vigilante. If somebody breaks the law, you report them to the courts. The courts will take actions. But everybody wants to be a vigilante. That doesn't reflect well on Islam. This is the other way around. These are primitive, easily provoked people. They have no mind, no sense. There's a lot of saying tell you that when there's an argument, the first one throw the punch is the one declared his argument is wrong. So the line should be, you don't get provoked. You only resort to physical strength, only defending yourself and not your ideas. You don't need physically defend your ideas. So somebody mocking your religion, mocking your beliefs, mocking your looks, and so on, just ignore them. Easier said than done. As you get older, it becomes easier because you've seen the results of this altercation comes with no good. I remember a couple of years ago, I had somebody standing in front of the masjid on a chair or something, and I don't know what he was calling Muslims to repent, to go to Jesus and accept him as their savior. I mean, he's not coming asking for problem. So if somebody comes out and do any altercation, you will be it in the news. Whatever small church that he's got will be famous. People will pour donations to them and bring it to problem. Ignore them, nothing happened. I think they called the police on them and they asked them to move because they're disturbing public peace or something like that. And that's it. It was done. But if somebody took it physically and done any altercation, there could be somebody it will be taking pictures of it, be on the internet. Like the same priest that burned Quran and he started becoming famous and people pouring donations to him. And so it's a ploy. So strength really comes, like Rasulullah have said, that you control yourself with anger when you're angry. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam always controlled his anger, even when people can tell that he's not happy physically, he turns red and so on, but he controls anger. A man came to him and grabbed him from his collar and started leaving a mark on his neck. He said, give me from the money that Allah provided you. This is not something you inherited or your grandparents gave. Give me from that money. The Sahaba wanted to jump him. So what he's saying, he said, just leave him alone. Say, this is not the way that you ask. You ask politely, and we give politely, and so on. And there's multiple incidents. So controlling yourself, at the end, you want a better result. You don't want revenge. You want to have a better result, a positive result. The words that you say, the actions that you do should have more positive results than negative.
This another hadith when Sayyidah Aisha talked about that Prophet Muhammad, he didn't ever become angry except if there is something related to the Islamic values.
Yes.
But when someone talk about our religions, this is Islamic value.
Yeah. But there's a difference. Rasulullah ﷺ was the head of state. So somebody attack Islam or propose a certain criticism of Islam, he being the top leader of the state and legislator, he need to right that wrong. Because if somebody says something wrong about Islam and he kept silent, that means it is right. It's different from us. And it's different from when he wasn't a head of state, when he was in Mecca. The order was always a'rad an al-jahilin and so on. You turn away from there. But when you become a leader of a state, it's different. Because now you represent law and order and legislation. So both deen and dunya, he was the head of it. And it needs to be clarified. So that's why I'm saying what happens in a non-Muslim country when Muslims are minority is different what happens in a Muslim country when it's ruled by Sharia, where the laws need to be upheld. So you have Ibn Taymiyyah has a book about As-Sarib al-Maslul ala Shatim al-Rasul. His fatwa, if somebody curse or say bad words about Rasulullah, this is capital punishment. And this is an Islamic country, a judge, Muslim country, can do that. You as a person in a Muslim country, or even in a Muslim country, you have no right to carry that. You report it to the authorities will carry it. So it's different. Rasulullah being the head of state, yes, he's the top legislator, He's the ruler, he has to uphold the laws. We as human beings, we have no right to do that.
But I don't talk about taking revenge. I just talk about the anger itself. Because
Yeah, but you control anger. We're not saying, so here Rasul, he doesn't say you don't get angry. We should feel upset, anger when something wrong happened, especially in religion. And even personally, if somebody start calling you names or your parents and so on, you shouldn't be happy about it. You're not happy about it. It's the reaction. It's how you react to anger. It's the same thing as fear. If something that provoke fear, you should fear fear. You should feel the fear, but should not lead you to do something wrong. You should be a coward. So the difference between feeling fear and being a coward. The same thing between feeling angry and acting angrily. So that's the difference. Yeah, we should have emotions. You cannot be without emotions. Yeah, you should not be happy when you see wrong. You should reject that wrong. As we know, من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده فمن لم يستطع فبلسانه فمن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. When you see something wrong, you correct it with your hand. If you can't, with your tongue. If you can, in your heart. So with your hand, that means you have authority. You do it. You're the judge, you're the police, you're the so on. Then you do it physically. If you don't have that authority, you have an authority of the tongue. You can report it. You can legislator talk about it. You're a sheikh. You can talk about right, wrong, and so on, and educate people. And if this is not possible, even place in your heart, you should recognize it. So, feeling angry about the wrong situation is a right response. It's how you act upon it. So, what you act should be that leads to a positive outcome. إذا كان تغيير المنكر يؤدي إلى منكر أشد منه فلا يجوز تغييره. This is a rule, tells you when you see something wrong and you try to correct it and correcting it leads to a worse wrong, then you're not allowed to correct it. I always give an example. Drugs and alcohol are haram. They're wrong. You see a drug dealer on the corner, you shoot him. This is going to lead something more. It's, oh, this is haram. And this is no, you don't do that. So if you live in a Muslim country, you report it to the authorities. If you're not living in a Muslim country, you educate your kids, don't do drugs, don't drink. So that's the right response. So yes, I don't like seeing people drinking and doing drugs and so on, but the right response, I'm not a vigilante. It's just going to lead to more wrong. That should be the response.
Should we make some amal like sadaqah, dua, salah to neutralize that action? Because we can do a lot in response to that if something is there. But we can make dua for him. And Surah someone making dua for people when they were coming towards him.
Yeah, so that's one response. When somebody, you know there is some good in them, you make dua for them that Allah will guide them. If you feel somebody is totally terrible, you make dua that Allah will remove their harm from your way. So you respond to Allah. Anytime you want your dua to be responded, you start with a good deed. So either prayer, fasting, or zakat. When you start with the good deed, is Allah more likely to respond to your dua, to your supplication. Yeah, so this is being more open-minded. As I said, one should not be narrow-minded. I see this wrong, I have to take action with hand and correct it. This is not the right response in most cases. So there's here a chapter about dealing with either slaves or servants. And a lot of it doesn't apply us nowadays. So I don't think we're going to talk all about it, but we need to just remind that Rasulullah ﷺ, one of his last words when he was sick before he died, he said, "As-salat was-salat, wattaqullaha fima malakat aymanukum." He said, be careful to do your salah. Salat means I remind you about salah twice, and fear Allah in what you own. That means the slaves that you have, you own. You fear Allah the way that you handle them. So inshallah we'll stop here from this book and read more of the fiqh. There's always a story, they tell it about Ahnaf ibn Qais. Ahnaf ibn Qais, he was, Bani Qais was one of the biggest tribes in Arabia. And one of the leaders, Ahnaf ibn Qais, was known for his wisdom and calm in the face of calamity. So one time, a person from another tribe comes to them and says, "You're Al-Ahnaf?" He said, "Yes." And he goes and slaps him in front of everybody. So why do you do that? He's called Yabna Akhi, or my nephew. He was a youngster and he's an older person. So I said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "I have made a promise and oath in front of everybody, I'm going to slap the head of the tribe of Bani Qais. Have no fear." He said, "Ibn Akhi, you made a mistake. I'm not the head of the tribe. This man is the head of the tribe." Who was? He was the military leader of the tribe. He goes and slaps him, he cut his hand. So sometimes a foolish person will be dealt with a bigger foolish person.
We punish him wisely.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. They tell it sometimes about an English person, an Italian, and so on, and things like you give him a penny for doing something wrong, and then that person will do it to an Italian, and Italian will go and kill him, or something of that sort. But it is a common thing that sometimes a foolish person will be handled by a more foolish person. A wise person will leave him alone. It's like when you're seeing a bad driver cutting you and so on. Say, "I'll let him go," but I'm sure one time you're going to do it to a truck or somebody with bad brakes, and he's going to pay the price for it. So we're reading about what kind of surah Rasulullah used to recite in his salah. We're giving examples. Like in Fajr, he used to recite longer surah. But if he's traveling, he will read short surah. He read once, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. Sometimes he might read 60 ayah, and so on. In one time, he was reported to read Surah Al-Rum. Surah Al-Rum is what, 5-6 pages? Yasin, same thing. And sometimes he will read As-Saffat. But in Jumu'ah, he frequently would read Alif Lam Mim, تنزيل الكتاب لا ريب فيه, تنزيل الكتاب لا ريب فيه من رب العالمين, Surah Al-Sajda. And the second ruk'ah we say Surah Al-Insan, هل أتى على الإنسان. And that's in Salat al-Jumu'ah. A lot of people reading it in Fajr. I think this is the Fajr of Salat al-Jumu'ah.
No.
Yeah, this is Salat al-Fajr of Yawm al-Jumu'ah. Saying that, it's not a must. So you see some masajid, almost always, these are the two surah that they read for every Fajr. Rasulullah, yes, frequently read it, but not always. It's not a must. And I remember Sheikh Al-Albani, he was once recent one of his tapes. He said he went to a village and they knew him, so they asked him to lead Salah and Fajr. So he decided he's not going to read Surah Al-Sajda. So he read them another surah. Then we say Allahu Akbar, they all went for sujood because they know the first Allahu Akbar is a sajda. Went for sujood, he said, and then he just made his ruku' and so on. After he said, say, I'm Albani, I'm A'jami, I'm not born Arab. But I understand Arabic, you all understand Arabic. Where did the sajda came from? But they all tuned into Fajr, there'll be Surah Al-Sajda, the first Allahu Akbar, it will be going down for sujood.
So, nobody concentrates.
Yeah, that's the problem. When you keep repeating the same surah again and again, people start drifting. So that's why it is important when making dua istiftah, or you're making dhikr and ruku' and sujood, and learn more than one. So you pay attention to the words that you're saying, and the same thing with the ayat that you're reading. So people will start focusing on it rather than becomes a habit and you move on, don't understand what you're saying. وَكَانَ يُطَوِّلُ فِي الرَّكَعَةِ الْأُولَى وَيَقْصُرُ فِي الثَّانِيَةِ. Rasulullah, his habit, in the first rak'ah, he will read more than what he reads in the second rak'ah. A lot of ulama say there's an advantage of it. People who are late, they can come to the salah, they need to join in the first ruk'ah. And he doesn't make it too long, so the second ruk'ah start people getting bored and tired. في صلاة الظهر كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقرأ في كل من الركعتين الأوليين قدر 30 آية قدر قراءة سورة السجدة، وفي الأخريين قدر النصف من ذلك. فعن أبي سعيد الخدري قال: كنا نحزر قيام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في الظهر والعصر، فحزرنا قيامه في الركعتين الأوليين من الظهر قدر قراءة ألف لام ميم تنزيل السجدة، وحزرنا قيامه في الأخرين قدر النصف من ذلك، وحزرنا قيامه في الركعتين الأوليين من العصر على قدر قيامه في الأخريين من الظهر، وفي الأخريين من العصر على النصف من ذلك. هنا يقرأ في الظهر ما يعادل سورة السجدة من حوالي 3 صفحات تقريبا. في الركعة الثانية يقرأ نصفها، في الثالثة والرابعة يقرأ نصفهما، أي يجوز أن يقرأ الإنسان بعد الفاتحة حتى في الثالثة والرابعة من الظهر والعصر أن يقرأ شيء، لكن يجعلها قصيرة. وفي العصر يجعل كله نصف ما كان على الظهر. So in this narration, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the Sahaba said, we're trying to kind of guess how long he reads, because it's a silent prayer, so they don't hear him what he's saying. He said, we guessed that in the first ruk'ah of Dhuhr, he reads as much as you read Surah Al-Sajdah. It's about 3 pages. And in the second ruk'ah, he read half of that amount, about 1.5 pages. In the third and fourth ruk'ah, he will read half of these. So you're reading probably 1 page or less than 1 page. So that means sometimes, even in third and fourth ruk'ah, he will read Quran after Al-Fatiha. And in Al-Asr, he will do half of everything he's done in Dhuhr. So shorter in Asr. وكان أحيانا يقرأ بالسماء والطارق والسماء ذات البروج والليل إذا يغشى ونحوها من السور، وربما قرأ إذا السماء انشقت. يعني قرأ الآن على سور بعضها صفحة وبعضها نصف صفحة. And sometimes he will read surah that as long as 1 page or half a page. وربما اقتصر فيهما على الفاتحة كما في صحيح البخاري وصحيح مسلم على ركعتين الأخريين. And that and sometimes after the third and fourth ruk'ah we just read Surah Al-Fatiha. And we mentioned العصر. وفي صلاة المغرب كان صلى الله عليه وسلم يقرأ أحيانا بقصار المفصل، وقد روي أنه قرأ بطول الطوليين، وقرأ في سورة سفر التين والزيتون في الركعة الثانية، وكان يقرأ بطوال المفصل وأوساطه، وتارة يقرأ والذين كفروا وصدوا عن سبيل الله أي سورة محمد، وتارة يقرأ بالطور وتارة بالمرسلات. وكان طول الطوليين هم الأعراف والأنعام، وتارة يقرأ بالأنفال في الركعتين. So his recitation looks vast. So sometimes it will be very long, like Surah Al-A'raf, this is juz'u plus more than a juz'u. Al-An'am, sometimes you read with it, and sometimes will be very short. So depending on the situation, people behind him are people who have a lot of memorization for Quran, they have strength, they have time, he would read it long. He's busy, they're busy, or he noticed a lot of young, newer people in Islam, they don't memorize a lot of Quran, he will make it shorter. وفي صلاة العشاء كان يقرأ في الركعتين الأوليين من وسط المفصل، فكان تارة يقرأ بالشمس وضحاها وأشباهها، وتارة يقرأ إذا السماء انشقت، وكان يسجد بها، وقرأ مرة في سورة التين والزيتون في الركعة الأولى. صلاة العشاء he didn't make it very long, so he usually would read like الشمس وضحاها إذا السماء انشقت. So he talked about things a page or less than a page. And one time he was traveling, he read التين والزيتون. And if we know the story of Mu'adh, Mu'adh used to come and pray Isha with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then go to his part of the tribe, where a little bit on the outskirts of Medina, And being he's the most knowledgeable among their people, they wait for him until he comes for Isha. And then he will pray Sunnah, and they pray behind him Fard. And he recites long surah. One time, when he's in Isha, one of the youngsters left him alone, went to the corner of the masjid, prayed his 4 rak'ah, went home. And so when he's done, they told him what he's done. He said, this is munafiq. He's got his imam, he leaves him alone. The boy said, he's calling me munafiq. I'm complaining to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Say, why did you do that? He said, he comes, he prays Isha with you, and then he stays long. So sometimes after Isha, we'll talk with his Sahaba, and they'll talk one another. And then he comes to us, and he recites very long. And I don't understand when he's mumbling, him or you. It means he doesn't understand a lot of Quran. He might understand Fatiha, but you start going, his intellectual looks like he's limited. So I don't understand when you're mumbling about you or him. He said, then what do you do when you pray? He said, I read Surah Al-Fatiha, I ask Allah to grant me Jannah and protect me from hellfire. Say, this is what we mumble around. So he told Mu'adh, أَفَتَّانٌ أَنْتَ يَا Mu'adh? Are you putting people into trials? When you lead them, read something like الشمس وضحاها and so on. So read them something, a page, less than a page, so people can pay attention. End of the day, it's a long day, they're tired, they want to go back home and sleep. So be considerate. وجمعه صلى الله عليه وسلم بين النظائر وغيرها في الركعة. Sometimes he would read surahs that are similar or close enough. فكان يقرأ الرحمن والنجم في ركعة. So sometimes you read Surah Al-Rahman and Surah Al-Najm in the same rak'ah. So two little bit longer surah. You're talking about each one is about 2.5 pages long, close to 3 pages. You read 2 of them in one rak'ah. So that will be like 6 pages in one rak'ah. وكان يقرأ باقتربت الساعة والحاقة في ركعة. ويقرأ الطور والذاريات في ركعة. In Mus'haf, Dhariyat first, then At-Tur. Here he says At-Tur, then Dhariyat. So the ulama says then keeping the order of the surah is not a must in recitation. وغير ذلك ذكر كثير من هذه القراءات. صفة قراءة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان صلى الله عليه وسلم يقرأ القراءة آية آية. فيقول بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ثم يقف ثم يقول الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم يقف. So the way Rasulullah used to recite Quran, every surah he recited, he stops at the end of it. So he said بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, stops. الحمد لله رب العالمين, stops.
Question about the order. So,
yeah.
For example, if I pray Surah An-Nas in
Yeah.
the first rak'ah,
Yeah.
it's okay to read the surah that comes before it in the second?
Yeah. Because Rasulullah has done that. So the orders of the surah is not a must. Even in the same rak'ah, if you read more than one surah, then it is okay that the order is not kept. Reason for that, I mean, Rasulullah make it easier for us because sometimes we make mistakes in the order of it. So still the recitation is valid. A lot of ulama prefer that you keep the order, but if you don't, we have sunnah from Rasulullah when he did not keep that order. So that means it is permissible. So every ayah he stops on it. ويقول الرحمن الرحيم ثم يقف مالك يوم الدين ويقف وهكذا إلى آخر السورة وكذلك كانت قراءة كلها يقف على رؤوس الآي ولا يصلها بما بعدها. أخرجه أبو داود وغيره وصححه الحاكم ووافقه الذهبي. That so in Fatiha and every surah, every ayah he'll stop in it. وكان صلى الله عليه وسلم يمد القراءة. عن قتادة قال سألت أنس بن مالك عن قراءة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال كان يمد مدا. And then he would use to make al-mad. Mad is to make the long vowels long, following the rules of tilawa. قال الحافظ في الفتح المد عند القراءة على ضربين أصلي وهو إشباع الحرف الذي بعده ألف أو واو أو ياء. So knowing the rules of tajweed, when you have a long vowels, alif, waw, ya, a, u, e, then you make it long enough people understand this is a long vowel. وغير أصلي وهو الذي أعقبه الحرف الذي هذه صفته همزة وهو متصل ومنفصل. The rules of tajweed about المد المنفصل المد المتصل and how you do it. This is how Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم learned it. And this is where أحكام التجويد came from. The Sahaba heard it. They taught it to the tabi'een and tabi'een. And the ulama of qira'ah have written books about it. So people will continue following it.
Sure.
Now.
And how comes like Rasul heard it this way?
Yeah.
Now we have so many sheikhs that read like different ways. So isn't how they got it from?
So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to make it easy, he varied the recitation according to the tongues of the Arabian tribes. أنزل القرآن على 7 أحرف. So the tribe of Quraysh was considered the most formal. أفصحهم قريش. But you have people in the south, in the north, east, and so on. They might pronounce things a little bit. It says here الضحى والضحى. And so on. So there was recitation where it is allowed. Ra sometimes will be mufakhama, will be loud, ra, sometimes ra. And you have some recitation, even they keep it this way. The mad and so on. So there were different ways. Rasulullah did recite it in different ways. So people, when go back to their tribes, it's easy for them to continue reciting in their tongue. And this is where the qira'at did not keep one tongue in each qira'ah, but each sahabi heard it, he might have collected different tongues. So this surah in this way, this surah or the ayah, heard it this way. But at the end, all of it is mutawatir from Rasulullah sallam, authentic.
So you read with it?
Yeah. Yes.
In
Yeah.
Makkah.
Yeah. Bismillahi majriha wa mursaha. It should be majraha wa mursaha. So the recitation of Quraysh should be majraha. Majriha is a recitation of different tribe. So the whole Quran, I think, has 2 places where ra become re. But you have other recitation, it's very common, re, 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 it say ra, ra, ra. So, yeah, so it was reported this way. This is a part of making it easy. And this is why Umar, radiallahu anhu, once he heard one of the Sahaba, one of the surah reciting it different ways. So he grabbed him and dragged him. Rasulullah say he's like changing Quran. He said, "Tell me the recitation." He told him the recitation. He said, "Yeah, this is how it was revealed." Asked the other man, "How he tell me?" He read it. He said, "This is how revealed." He said, "Quran was revealed in 7 tongues, all of them tribes of Arabia, but to make it easy for people to understand and memorize." I know, like where I come from in Syria and Halab, the alif, they don't keep it alif all the time. Jai say J, kitab, kitab, and so on. And then we found out our old grandparents, they used to recite Qalun. And Qalun, a lot of it close to Warsh, where all these alifs. So it looks like the Arabian tribe that lived there, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, that's the one easier for them to keep with their tongue. But nowadays, everybody is studying Hafs and Asim, and that's one way. You have Warsh, and most people forgot the other recitations. But you have ulama of qira'at where they keep it. You have a lot of people who know the 7 qira'ah and some of them the 10 qira'ah. So some scholars need to keep that, but the majority of us learning one way of doing it is enough.
Sheikh, what's the difference between the 7 qira'at and 10? Is like the other 3 are not mutawatir?
Yeah, so the other 3, there's disagreement on them, how mutawatir they are. The 7, everybody considers them mutawatir. The 3 of them, there is some accept them as being authentic, and some they say it's not that authentic. And within each recitation, there's sometimes small variation. But at the end, this is for the specialized scholars in qira'at. For most of us, you learn one, you stick to it, and inshallah you'll be fine. ترتيل القراءة وتحسين الصوت فيها. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كما أمر الله تعالى يرتل القرآن ترتيلا لا هذا ولا عجلا، بل قراءة مفسرة حرفا حرفا، حتى كان يرتل السورة حتى تكون أطول منها. So Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم, he used to recite Quran slowly. every letter is pronounced correctly, every word is pronounced correctly, everybody understands it. Sometimes he certain surah make it longer than a surah that's shorter than it, longer than it. That means if it needs to pay attention to it, the words of it are harder and so on, he might make it slower and longer. So it helps people to focus and understand what he's saying. There will be no mistakes. Clarity is very important. وكان يقال لصاحب القرآن اقرأ وارتق ورتل كما كنت ترتل في الدنيا فإن منزلك عند آخر آية تقرأها. كلما قراءته أبطأ وواضحة أكثر معه مدى أكثر يدخل في الجنة. يقرأ بسرعة ينتهي حفظه بسرعة يصل إلى درجة بالجنة، والذي قراءته إما عنده قرآن أكثر يحفظ أكثر أو قراءته مرتلة أبطأ يصل درجات أعلى في القرآن. Rasulullah he said that a man when he enters Jannah he said recite, read and recite the way you recite in dunya. Your level, how deep you go in Jannah is at the last ayah that recite. So that can happen one two ways. Either you memorize a lot of Quran or your recitation is quieter. So both people memorize the same Quran. One read it very fast and the one is slow. The one reads it slow, he goes further into Jannah. Because that's the way he recited. Of course, within the rules. So you don't make it intentionally boring, but long enough that people can understand it. Now,
did the Prophet ﷺ have this practice that we see nowadays of repeating words or ayat in the Quran to maybe emphasize?
I have not seen that. I think there has been reports that sometimes in his own salah, in Qiyamul Layl, one ayah he might repeat the whole night. إن تعذبهم فإنهم عبادك وإن تغفر لهم فإنك أنت العزيز الحكيم. That surah he said, that ayah, he said one time the whole night he kept repeating it. But in his recitation for the other people, I have not read where it is. So occasionally to be done, and it's okay. But some people, you can see they kind of stretching it, where they keep repeating it, and they especially in Salat al-Taraweeh, they're trying to get people to cry behind them and so on. It should come natural. One should not stretch things and force it. The best recitation are the recitation that you understand and you feel the khushu' and the meaning of it in the recitation, rather than just some people just shouting the words, or just making it pretty that you enjoy the sound but you're not concentrating on the meaning. At the end, it's about understanding the meaning so you can practice it.
What's your favorite qari, Sheikh?
Qari? I think the best one really is Husari. If you want to learn proper pronunciation of Quran, Sheikh al-Qurra al-Husari. That's the best. But there's a lot of, mashallah, excellent ulama everywhere. But everybody consensus that Al-Husari is the best.
شيخ هناك الله أعلم حديث للرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول كان الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم في قراءته كلما جاء إلى استغفار يقف يستغفر كلما وصل إلى حمد يحمد
نعم خصوصا في قيام الليل. الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قيام الليل I think Ibn Mas'ud once prayed to him, or Ibn Umar, and he read in one ayah Surah Al-Baqarah وآل عمران والمائدة والنساء in one rak'ah. And when he was reading, every time there's istighfar, ask Allah for istighfar. When it's mentioned of Jannah, ask Allah grant Jannah. When there is hellfire, ask Allah protect him from hellfire, and so on. So in Qiyamul Layl, making that dua is common. There are certain places where Rasulullah, even in other prayers, that he made it. Like I think in what Surah Al-Qiyamah, when it question Alaysa Allahu, and they say Bala. So some places where it's mentioned that he would say it aloud.
But Sheikh, بتكون سري صح؟
نعم.
الاستغفار أو الناس.
Yeah. But if you're reading alone, you can say it. Like سبح اسم ربك الأعلى. Rasulullah, he says سبحان ربي الأعلى. But you wouldn't say it in the same way you pronounce Quran. So if you're saying that سبح اسم ربي الأعلى بالتجويد, in Qiyamul Layl, then for yourself say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. You're not going to say Sabbih isma rabbika al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. So you say it in a normal voice. If you're reading the prayer, it's better not to confuse people. A lot of people don't know these rules. For yourself, you can do whatever you want, part of the sunnah. When you're leading prayer, you try not to confuse them. If they don't know the rules, you don't want to confuse them about it.
So one of those, like, you know, I just pray Maghrib, so the Imam recited Surah Al-Tin.
Yeah.
And the end,
أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. This one, there's no authentic narration that you say Bala.
Okay.
Some people saying it, but the narration about it is not authentic.
Sheikh, what about the maqamat? Some qurra, they do maqamat.
Yeah, this is prohibited.
Even if it's according to tajweed, the med.
Yeah, but so what the ulama say, مقامات أعجمية. هذه ليست لغة العرب، هذه ألحان أعجمية. That المقامات, when people reading about it, they're following the rules of singing of non-Arabs. So mostly Persians, Turks, and so on. And they're following قام العجم, whatever, and so on. It says if it occasionally happen, because we are living in our environment. So what is beautiful, you get affected with your environment. So we might say something that sound like these maqamat without intentionally trying to do it. I remember that somebody was talking about one Immat al-Haram, and they told him that he's reading maqamat, say ليس عن قصد. He doesn't intentionally trying to follow maqam, but he heard a lot of people reciting, so he might pick up a thing or here there. But maqamat, they have rules for it, and it is prohibited that one learn maqamat, because it will turn it into singing. If you hear that's why a lot of people don't like Abdul Basit, because he sometimes recite in maqamat and people are Allah, Allah, and they start like enjoying the voice rather than enjoying the meanings of the Quran. So one should not exaggerate, make it ليس منا لم يتغنى بالقرآن. None of you consider part of us if they don't beautify their voice in Quran, but it should not be considered singing. So this different, يتغنى ويغني. So it should make it beautiful, the recitation, according to the rules of the Arabs of that time, of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After that, al-lahan, the rules have changed. People start getting influenced, but other languages, and they start getting the musical influence of other cultures, and it becomes something different. It becomes like singing, and that's not the purpose of it.
Their argument, Sheikh, is they said like Adhan Ibn Mas'ud, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was listening to him, and after he finished, he told him, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you read good.
Yeah. Al-Ash'ari ﷺ told him, "Utita mizmaran mazawiri Dawood." Yes, but these are all the rules of Arabia. He did not recite the rules of Persia, and most of maqamat nowadays are coming from Persia. So people learning from it, and you would hear, if you hear somebody singing in Turkish or Persian or so on, a lot of it you can recognize. Yeah, I know these tunes. So it's the putting it in a tune other than the Arabic tune, that's the one that's prohibited.
حضرتك بتقول ان الشيخ عبد الباسط عبد الصمد
بعض تلاواته some of his tilawat are perfect, tajweed perfect, but some of it, the ones that he had audience in it, I mean, it was like singing. And al-Husari, I don't think anybody reported. Anyhow, I'm not an expert in tajweed, so I tell you this is general information, so don't take it from me as being granted. وكان يمد قراءته عند حروف المد فيمد بسم الله ويمد الرحمن ويمد الرحيم، المد الطبيعي ونضيد وغيرها. وكان يقف على رؤوس الآيات وأحيانا يرجع صوته وهو يقرأ على قدر سورة الفتح. وقد حكى عبد الله المغفل ترجيع قال يهز في صوته ولا الضال، هذا الترجيع. So sometimes when there's mad, long mad, he will have some vibration in his voice. This is called tarjih. So when it's appropriate, within the limits. وكان يأمر بتحسين الصوت بالقرآن فيقول زينوا القرآن بأصواتكم فإن الصوت الحسن يزيد القرآن حسنا. For the people to try to do the best with good voice, he said, a good voice will make Quran even better. وكان يقول إن من أحسن الناس صوتا بالقرآن الذي إذا سمعتموه يقرأ حسبتموه يخشى الله. هذا حديث صحيح رواه ابن مبارك في الزهد والدارمي وابن نصر والطبراني وابن نعيم. The Rasul says, the best of you in Quran, the one when you hear him, you think that he's fearing Allah. So this is the purpose of it, to give you you feel the meaning of it. So not just you enjoying the sound, it's conveying the meaning. وقال لأبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله عنه لو رأيتني وأنا أستمع لقراءتك البارحة لقد أوتيت مزمارا من مزامير آل داود. فقال أبو موسى لو علمت مكانك لحبرت لك تحبيرا.
This is the argument of Shaykh.
ولكن كله ضمن قواعد التجويد. And once Rasulullah sallam told Abu Musa al-Ash'ari from Yemen, and Yemen have beautiful voices. and he was reciting the Quran for himself. Rasulullah heard him. So he told him, if you saw me yesterday listening to your recitation, as if you have one of Mazamir Dawood. Dawood was said to have what they call the sounds of David, that he accompanied his recitation with some flutes. So he said, as if it was one of these flutes. The voice was so good. He said, if I knew you were listening, I would have made it even better.
Okay, good question. I heard one of the ulama talk about like the ayat of Bani Israel saying that Yadullahi maghlula.
Yeah.
And then they say the adab of reciting the ayat where they say that is quiet,
yes.
and then or low voice, and then when you say ghullat aydihim, is this part of maqamat or is this something different?
No, this is not. This is more like rules, and a lot of it are not authentically narrated. This is an opinion, ijtihad. Yeah. So when you conveying the meaning. So some people put their own understanding conveying the meaning. There's some of them waqf that's considered wajib because the meaning changed. When talking about وقالت اليهود يد الله مغلولة غلت أيديهم ولعنوا بما قالوا وقف واجب بل يداه مبسوطتان. So you cannot say they said, well, Allah, the Jews were cursed, the one who said that Allah is poor and his hands are tight. They're cursed what they said. You stop here. Allah's hands are always open and He's generous and gives. So you cannot say, oh, and they curse what they say that Allah is generous. No, this is two meanings. They were cursed about what the previous has said, and then the second one comes, Allah is generous and always gives. So when the meaning changes, you have to stop.
But some ayahs that I think one of them, Surah Ibrahim, whenever you stop, it will change the meaning. That's why I think some people go back.
Sometimes they go back if the meaning changes, but I think people are overdoing it. So sometimes you'll have the one ayah, 6 lines, and they stop like 10, 12 times. You need to assume that people behind you understand the meaning. The only time to go back when the meaning changes. Because in Quran, a lot of times there could be chapters are connected, but each ayah stops, you stop, and then you continue with it. Alif Lam Mim, الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم نزل عليك الكتاب بالحق ونزل القرآن والإنجيل. Ayah stops here. من قبل هدى للناس. من قبل is connected, but here you stop. You continue with another meaning. People understand this is connected to it. So the time you have to repeat it when the meaning changes of it, then you say, okay, they have to go back because the meaning changes. When the meaning doesn't change, you connect it and people can understand it's connected, you go on. You don't have to go back and go back. A lot of times distracted. Come on, I understand. You consider me what? I'm thick, I don't understand what you're saying. You have to keep repeating it to me. So sometimes the way they learned it, their mashayikh were afraid, and some of them because they were teaching Ajami, people who don't understand Arabic, so they have to keep repeating it so they don't make a mistake. But I think it should not be overdone. فإذا نعم ماذا يقول إذا قرأ أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى فيستجيب ويقول سبحانك فبلى وإذا قيل سبح اسم ربك الأعلى فيقول سبحان ربي الأعلى لما رواه ابن عباس أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا قرأ سبح اسم ربك الأعلى قال سبحان ربي الأعلى أخرجه أحمد وأبو داود بسند صحيح. And they see the narration when Rasulullah used to say سبح اسم ربك الأعلى, he used to say سبحان ربي الأعلى. وروى موسى بن أبي عائشة قال كان رجل يصلي فوق بيته وكان إذا قرأ أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى في سورة القيامة قال سبحانك فبلى فسألوه عن ذلك فقال سمعته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. هذا الرجل لم يسمى رجل يصلي لكن السند صحيح لأنه صحابي والصحابة كلهم عدول ثقات حتى لو لم يسمى فالسند متصل. In this narration they've seen a man praying. So when it's hot in summer, people go on the roof of their house at night time. It's cool. So he's praying and people heard him. And whenever he comes, أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى, the last ayah in Surah Al-Qiyamah, isn't Allah capable of resurrecting the dead? So it was ending with a question. So he would always say, Subhanaka fabala. I glorify Allah. Yes, he can do it. So they ask him, why do you do that? That's not part of the Quran. Say, I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the same way reciting him. So here the narration we're talking, that man, nobody mentioned his name. But the narration is still considered authentic and connected because that man is a Sahabi. All the Sahaba, whether you knew their name or not, are considered trustworthy. So if it's different, if it was the Tabi'i, the second generation, third generation after, you need to know who it is. Because these generation, there was a mixture. But the Sahaba, all of them, from the Book of Allah, from the Sunnah of Rasulullah, we know they are trustworthy. And the good thing about the Sahaba, yes, in their time they were munafiqeen. These munafiqeen never narrated anything from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you never see Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul mentioning any hadith. So alhamdulillah, Allah saved us from them. مواضع الجهر والإسرار بالقراءة والسنة أن يجهر المصلي في ركعتي الصبح والجمعة والأوليين من المغرب والعشاء والعيدين والكسوف والاستسقاء ويسر في الظهر والعصر وثالثة المغرب والأخريين من العشاء. So when are you reading aloud and when you're reading in secret? Most of us know that Fajr, you read it aloud. Jumu'ah, you read it aloud. Maghrib, the first two rak'ah aloud. Isha, the first two rak'ah aloud. In the Dua al-Istisqa, when you read it, you make Salat al-Istisqa for the rain, you read it aloud. Kusuf, when there's solar or lunar eclipse, it is allowed. And then in the last two ayah, Dhuhr, all of it is silent. Asr, all of it is silent. The third rak'ah of Maghrib is silent. The last two of Isha is silent. أما بقية النوافل فالنهارية لا جهر فيها. When it is other sunnah, if it's during the day time, you don't say it aloud. والليلية يخير فيها بين الجهر والإسرار والأفضل التوسط. And at night time, when you're praying sunnah, you can make it aloud, you can make it silent. You have the choice, or you can make it in between, something enough that you would hear it or somebody next to you. Now, I have a question? Okay, that's right. So you raise your hand. لحديث أبي قتادة رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خرج ليلة فإذا هو بأبي بكر رضي الله عنه يصلي يخفض من صوته. قال ومر بعمر بن الخطاب وهو يصلي رافعا صوته فلما اجتمعا عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أبا بكر مررت بك وأنت تصلي تخفض صوتك قال قد أسمعت من ناجيت يا رسول الله. قال لعمر مررت بك وأنت تصلي رافعا صوتك فقال يا رسول الله أوقظ الوسنان وأطرد الشيطان. وسنان النعسان النائم. أوقظ الوسنان وأطرد الشيطان. زاد الحسن في حديثه فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أبا بكر ارفع من صوتك شيئا، وقال لعمر اخفض من صوتك شيئا. رواه أبو داود والحاكم وصححه ووافقه الذهبي. So, at night time, Rasulullah ﷺ went around and he heard Abu Bakr reciting at night time softly. And then he heard Umar reciting loudly. So when they later on gathered together, asked Abu Bakr, you were reciting softly. You say, the ones I'm addressing heard me. Means Allah has heard him. I mean, that's good enough. Umar said, well, I'm reciting loudly. Whoever is asleep, him or people around him, will wake up and shaitan will run away. So Rasulullah addressed Abu Bakr, say, make your voice a little bit louder. And Umar said, make your voice a little bit softer. ولا تجهر بصلاتك ولا تخافت بها وابتغي بين ذلك سبيلا. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed Rasulullah sallam that your salah should not be too loud, too soft, something in middle. And that's addressing especially nighttime. Yes, Akhi.
Two questions came, but it's late. So the question number one is that in the silent prayer, the Imam reciting long prayers, like long surah. So say someone recited Surah Al-Nas.
No.
So he should.
It is acceptable to recite Surah Al-Nas, but as I said, you should be considerate to the people behind him. If the people behind him are tired or they would not be able to understand it, then he should be considerate and not recite it. But he can. Surah Al-Nas.
I think the question was that if followers, they recited Surah Al-Nas, but the Imam is still continuing in the silent prayer, should they keep reciting other surahs?
I don't understand. You talking about the first rak'ah and second rak'ah?
Silent prayers.
Yeah, in the silent prayer, say in the Salat al-Dhuhr.
Oh, Salatul Dhuhr, okay. So they themselves are reading Surah Al-Nas?
No, the Imam, yeah, they themselves read Surah Al-Nas.
Yes, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ.
Yeah.
Yes. And the Imam is reading a longer surah. Yeah. Then they can continue with other surah. Yeah. So it's better not to keep silent. If you decided for yourself, I'm going to read قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. You finished it and the Imam is still reciting. You can recite any other surah. You can start with Duha, Alam Nashrah Laka Sadrak, Qul Wallahu Ahad. So it depends. If you know your Imam, what his usual pattern is, you would add another surah that's, usually he reads a page. So I've read 1/3 of page. I'm going to read something as long as 2/3, so I'll catch up with him. You can do it. If you don't know him, the first time you pray behind him, you can choose whatever and then stop whenever he makes ruku'. Yeah, but don't keep silent. Just let me finish with him.
The second question thing is that someone thinking that it is a sunnah to recite the surahs according to the hadith that the Rasul read.
Yes.
So is it a sunnah?
It is sunnah, but not all the time. Rasul did do it, but he didn't make it a standard that's the only way of doing it. Yes.
Okay, I have a question. If you join a salah late, let's say you miss one rakah. So at the end of the salah, the Imam is doing the
Tashahhud.
Tashahhud. If he's doing the Salat Ibrahim,
Yeah.
you behind him, should you do it? Or
Yes, Salat Ibrahim is part of Tashahhud.
No, but that's not your last rakah.
Yeah, even if you're in the second ruk'ah,
Okay.
we'll come to it. Salat Ibrahim is part of Tashahhud. A lot of the commonly most people will end up Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah and they stand up. The proper way to say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala alihi. So even in the second ruk'ah, you're supposed to do it, but there's a ijtihad of some of the ulama where they stop here. So for you, you say it. Yeah. If your imam is still reciting, you read it. It's a dua. You always make the salam on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Is there an authentic narration of the Prophet ﷺ would read the same surah in both rak'ahs?
Yes, there had been a narration, and the narrator said, I don't know if he made a mistake or was intentional, but it happened. If it was a mistake, the wahi will come to him. Tell him it's a mistake, he will tell people, I did this is wrong. Since this is incorrect, that means it's sunnah. Occasionally, if somebody read the same surah in both ruk'ah, salah is valid and acceptable. But his practice different surahs.
Somebody sent me a question around when you're in sujood. He said he recently found out that you're not supposed to read the Quran when you're in sujood. And he said that he found out that he can, but if you're making dua, and if the dua is from the Quran, you can do that.
Yes.
But what about if you're praising Allah and you use like Surah Al-Ikhlas as to praise Allah? Is that okay? Or
Better not. So you don't read the whole surah as a part of dua. If it happens you make your dua, it's part of a surah, one ayah surah. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So this is part of ayah. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ رَبَّنَا. So you don't read it from beginning, say وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ. You just say the part of dua, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيا حَسَنَةً. And some, like the Sahaba, will add a word to it. Allahumma Rabbana Atina fid. So this way you're not making it exactly as the Quran, but you following the dua that Allah has praised. So you say, so yeah, you don't read the whole ayah. So if it happened, your dua is a part of surah, one ayah or so, you can say it with the intention that it is not Quran, it is a dua.
Same thing for praising.
You say same thing for praising Allah. Yeah. In ruku' and sujood. Yeah. Because these are the two positions we're not supposed to recite Quran in it. Is it time for? It is permissible because you are allowed to make dua anytime during the salah, but it hasn't been reported from Rasulullah. So we usually just say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim or the other types of dhikr that's mentioned in it. But if you make dua, it's your salah is valid and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts. Let's say you said your imam take things slowly. And he's saying Subhana Rabbiyal Azim 3 times, 4 times. You've done it 3 times, 4 times. I want to ask Allah for forgiveness. Well, you can do it. Yeah, but it's better, especially in sujood, there was more mentioning of dua than in ruku'. But if it happened that you've done it, then inshallah it's acceptable. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. الله أكبر.